Okay, and then just say, yeah, well, welcome to everybody. Good evening to this session on cycling as part of Ryedale Environment Week. As usual, we're here in Zoom. The session is going to be recorded so that we can watch it back later, and some of your friends and colleagues can as well. As always, for those of you who've been to some of these events before, then do open your chat box and say hello and interact, ask some questions, share your thoughts, ideas. We've got plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the session today, so start lining up some really nice questions for our two speakers. Maybe just have a quick hello from Helen, who's on second tonight. But Helen, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hello, I'm Helen Gundry. I live in Kirby Moorside and I'm the voluntary secretary for Ryedale Cycle Forum. We look forward to talking to you in a little while.
Fabulous. Thanks, Helen. But first we have David Bealey. David's from Big Bear Bikes, and he's going to talk to us about e-bikes. At least that's the plan. I'm sure in the Q&A we can cover all kinds of other cycling topics as well, but the starting point for David's talk is going to be about e-bikes. I'll maybe stop the slide for there now and hand over to you, David.
Hello everybody, thanks very much for having me to your session. Amazing technology, isn't it? Absolutely fantastic. I'm the founder and owner of Big Bear Bikes and Dolby Forest Cycle Hub. So we have two cycle stores in the area, and e-bikes are a big part of any successful bike business today. We go back really to the 1st of January 2016 when e-bikes were formally legalized in the UK. Before that, it was a bit like what the scooters are now, in that people were riding them, but they weren't a legally defined vehicle. And so it was a grey area, and when you have a grey legal area like that, the quality manufacturers and brands don't want to enter because there's too much reputational risk. And we're seeing that in the scooter world at the moment. People are selling scooters, but actually, apart from off-road, that there's no legal area to ride them either on the pavement or on the road. I think that will change shortly. But on the 1st of January, we kind of adopted in the UK the European rule set for e-bikes. And that was really three main things that define what an e-bike is. There's a definition of the maximum power it can have, and that is 250 watts. Okay, what's 250 watts? Well, we all know what a 100-watt light bulb is, so 250 watts is 2.5 of those continuous power. In terms of a human being, what's 250 watts? 250 watts is probably what a reasonably fit, quite a regular fit cyclist could deliver ongoing for 5 minutes, absolutely flat out. So that's quite a lot of power, really. If you're someone that's not very fit and can't give much power, you're going to be getting 2.5 times as much, and even as a strong rider, you're going to be getting the same again. So that's the kind of assistance that you can get. So the power was there at 250 watts. The next thing that was regularized is the top speed, and that's 25 kilometers an hour, which is about 15-16 miles an hour. We see a little bit of variety from the control systems on the bike. That isn't the top speed of the bike, that's just the top speed of the power assistance from the motor. So you can go faster than that if you are able to do that, and certainly on a hill you can even freewheel down faster than that, but assisted 16 miles an hour. And then the last major thing is the control of the bike. Two aspects to that. One is, before then, we'd seen a lot of kind of Chinese bikes that had a throttle on them. So either like a motorbike, a twist grip throttle, or one of these thumb throttles under the handlebar that you get. So when you have a throttle control system, basically you've got an electric motorbike because you don't have to pedal it. There was a lot of those around, low quality really. And what defines an e-bike now is that the motor will only engage when you pedal. There is no hand throttle on it. So in that sense, it's just like a normal bike in that it has the normal brakes and gears and you pedal it. And when you push on the pedal, a bit like power steering. When you turn a handlebar, it then helps push the pedal round. And on most bikes nowadays, you have a variety of settings from low through to high in terms of how much power you want to the maximum that it is allowed to give, 250 watts. Is that all kind of okay? Am I making sense there, so to speak? Great. Okay. So that defined them in January 2016. I could see that there were going to be a revolution and be so transformative to the market. And you could even look ahead. Normally with a lot of things, we look ahead to America, but I was looking ahead in Europe, especially in Germany, seeing and traveling as well. I could see how many bikes were being sold, how many were on the market, what they were being used for, and I just thought, we're going to go that way, and I want to position my business to take account of that, which we have done. And to give you an idea, this year I think we'd probably sell about 350 e-bikes in Pickering. So it's quite a thing, really, and it's great because it's just opening up cycling to so many people who maybe haven't done it before or have even lapsed. And initially the response to an e-bike in store was, oh, I don't want to do that, that's cheating. And we don't really hear that anymore. So where that was coming from was people not understanding that when you ride an e-bike, you still have to pedal it and you still have to give a proportion of the power. So it's not cheating, you're working. What happens is it just lets you go further and ride more hilly and more interesting terrain and help you out. Maybe your full ride was to do a local loop up to Newton on Rawcliffe and Cropton and around, and that's your limit. Well, if you do that on an e-bike now, you could extend off up to Stape and do all sorts. So you're burning the same calories, but because you're being assisted, you can do it more. The other thing that feeds into that is you can get a mixed group of riders. And so what we're now seeing is a lot of husband and wife kind of couples, just partners, whereby with different levels of fitness and different confidences and skill levels and ages, they can go out together. Initially, it used to be that the stronger one would still have a normal pedal bike and the other half would be buying an e-bike. But more and more now we're seeing couples both buying e-bikes, because what happens is with an e-bike, it's limited to 16 miles an hour, but it can do 16 miles an hour on the flat and it can do 16 miles an hour up a hill as well. If you select a higher power setting, you're still having to work, you're still having to push it, but 16 miles up a hill on a normal bike is a very, very fast speed. So time and time again, we would get the fitter partner coming in and having been put to the sword for 2 or 3 months by the less fit partner, said, I need to buy one as well. But that whole it's cheating thing's gone away now, and it's we want to stay fit, we want to explore the fantastic area that we live in. It's not an elite sport, it's just a great leisure activity, and that's where it's just really kind of taking off at the moment. In general, therefore, it's the 40 plus market that is taking them up. But it's really good to see returning cyclists and less confident, more senior people who haven't been able to ride. And what's been very interesting from an industry point of view is that the more traditional shops, and we were that a little bit before we moved. We moved our main store, if you don't know where we are, from one side of the doctor's surgery to the other side, to the old Co-op supermarket, and that's a more mainstream, smarter, less niche looking store. And what the industry has found is that a lot of e-bikers don't see themselves as cyclists, and they won't go into traditional cycle shops. And so what's happened out there is that you've got a lot of specialist e-bike chains, mainly in the main conurbations, setting up who only do e-bikes. And we were doing okay with e-bikes in the slightly smaller, more nichey, kind of cyclist shop. But now we've got a more kind of supermarket looking place, if you like, older, less, people who don't see themselves as cyclists feel very confident to come in and the layout of the store is that the e-bikes are a big chunk of them anyway are close to the front door, so people kind of come in and don't have to find them. They feel happy that they found the right place, and that's a big part of getting this set of customers happy and going on the bike. I'll talk a little bit more about the bikes technically. So the motors on the early bikes, there's 3 positions for the motor really. The motor can be in the hub on the back wheel of the bike. It can be in the middle between where you pedal, or it can be in the front wheel as well. The front hub motors, absolutely horrible, actually dangerous really, because if you think you've got a front wheel turning, you turn a corner on gravel and that wheel is actually powering and it will just skid out from underneath you. So we've never done that, and I think I saw a shopping channel trying to knock them out for 500 quid. Where they got them from, goodness knows, I don't know, but really to be steered away from. You then get where the motor is in the rear hub, the back wheel, and that's okay. The trouble with that setup is that it's a less intuitive ride than when you have the motor in the middle between the pedals, because in the middle between the pedals, as you're pedaling, it's sensing very directly how much power you're doing, and then it's adding to that nice and gently, just like the kind of power steering. And so the big companies who provide motors, and I'm talking here about Bosch, Yamaha, big worldwide brands that we know, they will only provide the mid motor mounted setup there. That way, the motor being in the middle at the bottom of the bike, it's got a lower center of gravity, it's more stable, just a better overall package. And since the market's pretty much moved to that, again, that's kind of enhanced the uptake of the e-bike as well. And all our bikes are that setup, apart from we do a folding e-bike from Raleigh called a Stowaway. And due to the nature of being able to fold an e-bike, it's easier for it if the motor is in the back wheel. But apart from that, all ours are mid-mounted. A lot of initially, we don't see this anymore, but initially we'd get quite a few people coming to us saying, "Can I convert my bike to an e-bike?" And there was various third-party kits to do that. We've never done that. We absolutely steer away from it. Most of them you'd end up actually with an illegal vehicle because there will be a thumb throttle on it, or the speed wasn't regulated, or the power wasn't regulated. And increasingly what's happening, even over the last few years, is that initially an e-bike was based on a fairly standard design from a manufacturer. But what they're doing now is they're enhancing those designs for the use of an e-bike, which is a subtly different thing. It's a heavier bike. On average, it's moving a bit faster. So suspension is getting stiffer and stronger. Brakes are getting better. And nowadays, most good quality e-bikes, yes, they're a bike and you sit and you ride and you pedal it, but actually it's quite a different thing to a normal e-bike, and it's been enhanced to that. So that's the motor, positions of the motor. Big part of it then is the battery system, and you have a range of batteries. So in terms of sizing on batteries, the smallest size is typically a 300 watt hour battery, and it goes back to lights. That'll supply a 100 watt light bulb for 3 hours. It's that simple really. The biggest battery, and the move in the market is that batteries are getting bigger. That's great because it gives more range, but the downside is that a bigger battery, it's bigger and also it's heavier as well. And so we're going typically on the entry level kind of hybrid bikes. You'd be looking at a 300 battery. That's a relatively light, fast rolling bike. That bike with a 300 battery might go 30 to 40 miles range. So assisted range, still quite a lot. Going all the way up to a big full suspension mountain bike with a 600 battery, and that will probably do the same range but with twice the battery because it's riding on softer conditions. And what we do is we have a couple of brands who both use the Bosch system, In fact, we have a large display in store that we take customers through, a wall-mounted display supplied by Bosch. And what you do is you put into that your criteria, so your weight, the terrain that you ride in, the season. The season makes a big difference because of the temperature and the battery range. If it's windy, if you're commuting, if it stop-starts, we can actually give you quite an accurate, anticipated range of the bike from that system, and people are quite interested to see that. In terms of a couple of top tips, what we recommend people with e-bike batteries is that they never let them get too cold. So if it's cold in the shed or the garage in winter, take it off the bike and bring it in. Don't let it go below kind of 8 or 9 degrees. And also with the batteries, to maximize life, when you are storing it, if you're not riding the bike regularly over winter, the best thing to do would be to not have it fully charged. These batteries, they're lithium-ion batteries. They have no memory, but they don't like being left fully charged, so kind of half charge. In terms of life of the batteries, the manufacturers generally rate them to about 500 full cycle recharges, which is a lot. You know, that's a full charge every day for 2 years, obviously, something like that. But we expect them to probably last something like 1,000 charges. And so we've got customers now who are buying replacement batteries where performance has started to fall off a bit, and they're typically 4+ years old, which is not bad. I mean, they're expensive things. They're 400 to 600 pounds, but you know, if you're budgeting 100 pounds a year for your e-bike battery, that's, you know, that's a realistic kind of expectation that we do on there. How am I doing?
Can I jump in with a quick question, David, that's related to that? Because Helen's asking, what's typical range and how far can you go between recharging and where can you recharge? Is that straightforward? Maybe just a minute on that one.
So yeah, the ranges are what we've mentioned. In terms of recharging, it's any main socket. The charger comes with the bike, and as they're intelligent charges, so they tend to force the charge in quickly at the beginning, and then it drops to a trickle charge later on. So if you're wanting to push your range, and maybe you're happy that your bike will do a 40-mile range, and you're going to do a bigger ride than that, the charger is just the normal kind of electronic charger that you get with a power drill or something like that. You could take that with you, stop at a cafe and unplug the battery from the bike, and 20 minutes, and that'll give you another 10 or 15 miles. But most people will specify the bike and the size of battery to the kind of riding that they've got in mind. You know, bearing in mind that this is a very popular thing, and we've sold hundreds of bikes ongoing. We've possibly only sold, I can count on fingers of one hand, the number of people who've bought 2 batteries because they're going to do such a massive mileage. You know, and on our most efficient bikes, the fastest rolling, lightest bikes with the biggest battery, the range is 100 miles. You know, it's not a bad really to do that in a day.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. We've got so we talk about e-bikes, but we don't see it as e-bike. We see it as all these different categories, and we've got a few kind of pictures lined up. So I'll kind of talk you through the bikes and just point out some features there. Have we got that Verve one?
Yeah, let me do that. Or? Yeah, no problem. Let me find the right one. So if I start, any preference with which one? So I think
Verve
I've got
one.
This one here. Just on the time, we probably need to wrap up in 3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, right, okay.
David, so I know time flies. So, and there are a couple of questions there as well, but maybe let a quick tour around a couple of these then, would be
okay. Yep.
Would be useful. So yeah, tell us what we're looking at here.
So that's a typical e-bike, and that's an entry-level bike. And what's happened now is that you'll see it's a step-through bike. It hasn't got a crossbar. Call it a low step. That's from our main bike company, Trek. They've actually partnered with Bosch and will only supply Bosch equipment with the bike. And they've even built a bike factory in Germany. So our e-bikes are made in Germany alongside Bosch. But this is an entry-level bike. It's about £1,700. You can see in between the pedals, that's where the motor sits. It's got disc brakes from a mountain bike. So even though it's a leisure bike, it's got a very powerful hydraulic disc system. And the battery is mounted on the rack up at the top there at the back. That is the cheaper way of doing it, and the older, more simple way of doing it The trouble with that is that it's not very good for the centre of gravity, and it also looks quite old-fashioned and clunky. So even though that's the cheapest bike, we don't do so many of those. And if we can move to the Verve 3, which is the next one, next picture, this is a very common type of bike now from Trek. So it comes with a crossbar that you'll see, and it also comes in the same style with no crossbar that we've just seen on a previous bike. And outwardly looking at that, it doesn't have a battery, but in fact the battery is behind the Trek badge on the down tube there, and that's a big compartment, and that can hold a very large battery to give that bike 100-mile range. And something like that is nowadays kind of 2,300, 2,500, and people are buying that cleaner looking, less e-bike looking bike than the obviously more e-bike battery powered bike that we've seen in that previous slide. Should we do some questions if we're pushing for time?
Sure. Yeah. And then there's a couple there. Eden, do you want to come on briefly? And you've got some legislation questions there, I think.
Mm-hmm. Fire away,
Process
Eden.
of finding the mute
Am
button.
I
There we are.
unmuted?
There you go.
Yeah, thank you, David. You can probably see the question there. Can you see any impending legislation changes? And I'm thinking specifically of top speed and whether assisted pedalling becomes simple twist grip throttle.
I don't think so. The regulation is based on, I suppose they've looked at how they regulate motorbikes and mopeds, and the fact that for it to be a bike and not have to be insured and not have to wear a helmet, etc., not to have maybe an MOT, you need to keep it at a certain level of power and speed and weight and complexity. So what they've done is, they just keep it at that level. If you then say increase the speed to 20 miles an hour, really, are we really saying that we have to wear helmets then? Do you have to have an MOT? And so at the moment, I don't see any call for that. Or a 20 mile an hour crash is a lot more of a crash than a 15 mile an hour crash. And I suppose the big push for it would be for the commuting side of things. At the end of the day, if you can bash along at 20 rather than 15, 16, you're going to get that somewhere quite a bit quicker. And it does make a difference. You reduce your range correspondingly, and more than correspondingly, because the air resistance increases with the square of the speed. So at 20 miles an hour, the bike is using a lot more battery, and the range has really come down, by kind of 33%. Up until this year, I'd have said there's absolutely no chance of that happening. With the whole push to commuting, maybe, and city centre cycling, they may go on. One area of the cycling market that isn't being taken over, if you like, by e-bikes at the moment is the road bike or the racer, the traditional curved drop handlebar. And that's because a reasonably fit person on a very light sports bike like that on the flat can probably rock along at 17, 18 miles an hour, certainly 15 or 16 over a shorter distance. And that customer says, well, hang on a minute, I'm adding 5, 6, 7, 8 kilos of weight to my bike to go no faster on the flat. And sometimes on the flat, I'm actually pedaling and the motor is just sitting there dragging slightly and it's just kicking in on the hills. So we've seen very, very small uptake for that kind of cyclist. At the moment, the manufacturers are playing with the segment, and the latest bike this year, instead of having the big motor and the big battery, they've stepped back and they've gone for a very small motor that is no resistance whatsoever and a smaller battery. So in fact, the bike is still coming in under £30 as a package and is a nice thing to ride, yet you then just switch that motor on just to give you some assist on hills.
Sounds good. Fascinating. I sense we could go on a lot longer. Sadly, as always, time is against us. There are some other questions in the chat there, David. So maybe if we could, we'll hand over to Helen, but take a look, open the chat box there.
I see, right.
Give them a crack in the chat box and we can keep.
What sort of maintenance is needed? Maintenance completely...
Sorry, answering in the chat with the text.
All right.
We're
Okay.
going to have to switch to Helen
All right, okay,
to
fine,
cover
yeah.
that. But
Okay.
if you want to do that on the run, and then
Okay.
we can cover some of those, because they're probably
Okay.
quite easy. I say I'm making assumptions there, but and especially look out for the one from David about Lycra. So looking forward to your response on that one, especially. But quickly moving on. So Helen, tell us about cycling in Ryedale.
Right, hi everybody. I was going to talk to you about Ryedale Cycle Forum, which originally was Raising Cycling in Ryedale. That's a group that started 6 or 7 years ago now. It was originally formed by Cycle Touring Club, as was then, which is now Cycling UK, Ryedale District Council, and cyclists. And then my involvement was always from Kirby Moorside Environment Group, from the environmental sort of carbon abatement and lowering pollution side. So we've always had a good mixed group of people, and we've also had interest from parish and town councils from the beginning as well. Also, we've always had the national park and the Dalby Forest sort of interested, coming along to meetings off and on, which has been useful backup, and the Liz Bassendale from the Howardian Hills ANOV, the area, the Howardian Hills area. So that's always been a good mix of people. We do have a website, which is getrydalecycling.com, and you can subscribe to that website for free, and that tells you whenever we add anything onto the website. And we're always keen for more content. It's got a mixture of things about routes, about resources, about safety. It's got a development wish list of routes that we'd like to see, safe cycling routes we'd like to see developed. And it's got some inspiring videos from Holland and other places where cycling is, there's a lot more infrastructure. It's got quite a good stuff, and we'd like that website promoted, and like people to use it. So one of the things that often stops people from cycling is that they don't feel safe. So there's lots of people are now cycling, but a lot more people say, well, I would, but I don't feel safe, particularly on the roads. And not everybody's feels confident enough to go on a mountain bike or off-road and cope with that balance and all of those sorts of issues. So it's interesting. It's in these. There was a big push during lockdown, for more active travel, and this is now. It's also being pushed from the carbon abatement side of things, trying to reduce carbon footprint. And the Local Enterprise Partnership have actually got a target of increasing cycling by 900% in the next 10 years. Now, they haven't got a strategy to do that yet, but they're asking for people to help. But that's a massive target. So that extends then cycling. So it's not just for leisure. So so they want to see a lot more transport cycling, people cycling to the shops, people commuting, people cycling for sort of physical and mental health, sort of prescription, and all sorts of, and a wider range of people cycling, which of course the e-bikes backs up very nicely. So the more safe routes, with the Cycle Forum, we've been sort of an attachment to the district council for a long time, really, with support from the district councils, but we haven't got a bank account. We've got terms of reference. We don't have a constitution, so we're not able to hold funds or actually instigate new routes. We've been on and on and on at the county council for a long time. We're getting frustrated. We've had some help through the district council, particularly with the who managed to get funding for the Malton Pickering route, which we should see actually on the ground in the near future. But we started looking at a path for everyone model, because a lot of Ryedale is rural, and so you can share paths in areas that aren't too busy between villages. So we're looking at active travel routes to join up, to start off with, to join up the villages between Hovingham and Malton, and between Kirby Moorside and Helmsley. So these would be for cyclists of all abilities, including adapted cycles, for people with disabilities, also including wheelchairs, horse riders, walkers. So we're talking about, proper shared paths. Like, these don't work in really busy areas, like certain parts of a national park where you've got cyclists want to go much quicker than everybody else, but they can work between villages, where you've got good visibility, and it's a really good way of getting community support for a route. If it's not just for people flashing through in Lycra, if it's for everybody, then it's easier to get the support from parish councils and from local people, because they can see the benefit of that route through a small section they might want to use, rather than thinking, not everybody thinks of wanting to do long rides. And so because one of the reasons for having better infrastructure, of course, is that then people who are nervous of cycling now, people who are returning to cycling, haven't cycled for a very long time, or people who've never cycled before, it just gives people that much more confidence to move, to get out and try a bicycle. Or if they've got a disability, or if they can't, if you're going to need to use a tricycle, or if you've got a young family and you're just starting out, getting very small children on the bicycle, there's just no way that you might cycle on the places that you yourself have usually cycled on. When you start trying to take small children out on bicycles, it's just completely different story. One of the things that we'll need to back up the this Path for Everyone things is advice and support. For instance, simple things like seat height and wearing high vis stuff, and how to cope in the winter. If you're going to commute on a bicycle, it's not just about going out on a nice day. You need to be prepared for it being a practical proposition in most of the year. You might not cycle in the ice and snow, but you want to be able to go out when it's dark and when it's cold and when it's and still get from A to B. So we're going to need some to be working with Big Bear Bikes, the other cycle shops, and people who are able to give advice to cyclists to give that backup, so people don't start and then give up because it's not working for them. And the other thing, which Eden's always going on about, is mudguards. That a lot of leisure bikes don't necessarily come with mudguards. They don't necessarily come with lights, and these sort of things. If you're a regular cyclist, you've maybe got a rack at the back where you can put your bag, but these sort of. But if you're just never cycled before and you haven't got a cyclist in your family, you may how do you start? And one of the other things we might need also is more repair people scattered around the place, because if I'm in Kirby Moorside and my bike goes wrong and I haven't got a car, how am I going to get it into Pickering to Big Bear Bikes to get repaired? I think we're going to need some backup from our parishes and our district, sort of workshops for people for getting minor bike repairs. I know some of the bike cafes do that, which is great. Some of the leisure places, and I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw a cafe recently which had a bike repair offer, on a sign somewhere. So if you needed a bit of help, they would come out and help you. I'll stop in a minute because I know we've only got a few minutes left for questions then. What else was I going to say? Just looking through my flashcards. Just briefly on the Path for Everyone, quite a long process, which involves getting design, getting permissions, and then raising funds for the actual paths. And the paths we've got in mind each include some verge paths, some old rail bed, some upgrades to existing footpaths, and some completely new paths where there's no links at all at the moment. So quite a long process that we're going to need quite a lot of support for. So if anybody wants to help with that sort of letter writing and sort of being part of a close team to push these things forward, that would be really welcome, because they are massive projects and we're all volunteers, and it's a really big it's quite a challenge, but it's worth doing, but it's quite a challenge. I just briefly wanted to mention Cycling UK. We've got quite a good website for cyclists, and also sustrans.org. We've also got lots of resources online, sort of both national organisations that are worth having a look at. So I'll stop there in case anybody's got questions, because I know we've only got a little bit of time left. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, we're okay. We've got sort of a good 5 or 7 minutes if we're lucky. So interesting, the comments there. So David, so in terms of your repairs, that's the service you offer, is it? If people haven't got a car, you're able to come and pick it up for repairs as well? You're on mute at the moment, David, so take yourself off.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We just base it on time. So for deliveries and collections, we charge £10 per hour for a man in a van. So that's not something we make money on, but we can do that. Yeah.
So if you're just a few miles up the road, then it's not not going to break the bank, is it? So no, it's good service. Yeah, great. Okay. Do you see Eden's question there, Helen? Or do you want me to, or do you want Eden to come on? Would that be easier? You're on mute now, Helen. So if only the Zoom would unmute when you started speaking, it'd be a lot easier. So. Yeah, Eden, do you want to explain your theory there? Looks quite interesting.
Yes, certainly. Helen knows about this. I've been banging on about it for years. But I can't prove it because it's only one person who's done it. But I do find that if I look over, when I hear a car behind me on a normal two-track road, a vehicle behind me, I'll just half look round towards it, just give them a facial profile. If I do that, invariably find that they give me a wider berth. They'll usually be the wrong side of the white line, if you like. If I don't, ever so many times they'll be passing a metre and a half away. And does anybody know if any research has ever been done into this, if this is a common finding, or if it's any ideas?
Helen, have you heard of anything? Or she's shaking her head now. David, have you heard of anything like that? No. So I mean, it sounds like a good theory. So
okay,
you just scare them to death, Eden. I wonder why they.
It could be. It could be. Yeah. It could be.
They'll start wobbling around in the road. So
I think it's the fangs sticking out of the bottom lip. But anyway,
it's really interesting.
Be really interesting if other people fancied having a go and seeing what the results were.
Try it.
It might be it's just pure coincidence. It doesn't do anything at all. But I would love to know if that's the case, or if it isn't the case. And without other people trying it, I will never find out. If it is the case, then we're onto something interesting. We're back to the research where guys have worn long flowing hair and things like this, and put imitation kids on the back of the bikes to see what the passing motorist does. But it's interesting territory. If Ryedale Cycling Forum fancied having an informal trial, I think it might be really interesting.
Right. There we are. Something for everybody to try out. So
the Sustrans certainly have a sort of mantra of a sort of share, respect, enjoy for paths. To just really push the communication between different path users. That's not quite the same as what you were just talking about. The when you're out on a highway, but certainly on paths, the sort of acknowledging other users and that you're sharing a path, that it doesn't just belong to you, is really important. And it's the same, I know, on tow paths and anywhere where there's other people definitely going to be around. That it really needs to be pushed. This sort of share it, respect, enjoy mantra.
Yeah. Can I come back on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. I think it possibly goes beyond that in this case, though, because I think we're looking at some sort of psychology. I think in the same way that if you want to go killing things with a gun, you don't show them your face. There's something about the human face that I think when the car driver, I'm picking on car drivers, so when the vehicle driver behind sees that facial thing, they oh, human being. They don't even know they're doing it. But you can hear sometimes a change in throttle, and certainly you can hear the noise slightly changing as the car moves away. Whereas from behind, they think it's a cyclist or it's a thing. If you show them a person, it's that face thing. So I'll shut up now.
Something
but it would be
No,
really interesting for the people.
There you are. Give it a try and let us know.
Mm.
Yeah. I'll put a link there about, because there's some good routes on that Get Cycling page, isn't there, Helen? That
Yeah.
So anybody's looking for new routes, have a look at the link that's in chat there, because there might be something. And if you've, I guess, if people know of good routes and they've figured out a good, especially if it's a nice quiet route, then they can contact you, can they, Helen, or go onto the website and suggest routes if anybody's got.
It's really good to have plenty of routes on the website. And
I don't know if David, if there's any links you've got, is there anything on your website to to routes or recommended paths or so on in the local area? Then maybe don't forget to unmute, but say you're on mute again, David. I'll let me see if I can unmute you.
We don't. No, we
Okay.
leave that to the professionals in that area.
Right. Okay. No, that's great. Any more questions for Helen? Then pop them into chat. Maybe go back to you, David. Catching up on some of those questions before. Did you see the one there from Rachel about using a key to start an electric bike? And I guess thinking of the security, are they secure because you need a key to start them, or is that not relevant? Are they the same as a normal?
I mean, the answer to that is yes and no. So most of them, the batteries are removed by key, so you can take the battery off. But with all these safety systems, ultimately, it doesn't stop someone in a van uplifting the bike and chucking it in the back of the van. So the good old locking it to something is the basic of the security. Some of the controllers on them aren't removable. A lot of the controllers are removable. So you think, I walk away from it, I take the controller. The thing can still be ridden as a normal bike, just a heavy bike without a battery, unless you lock it to something.
Right. Okay.
The newer bikes, actually, the controllers on them can be removed, and even if the thief has bought another controller, it's a personalized controller to the bike, so that would stop it being used. It's then a heavy bike that you have to pedal, but most bike pinching is throwing bikes in the back of vans and estate cars, and that just goes back to locking it. There was a spate a couple of weeks back in Pickering where some out-of-towners came down and pinched 5 bikes in a day. It was on social media. One of them was a bike that we'd supplied. It was a £3,000 e-bike. 3 others were normal bikes that we'd supplied. And it was literally just that. In this case, the chap had pedalled into town, just left it outside a shop, not locked to anything, and off it went. And possibly that's a thing to add to the campaign list if it's not long enough already. It's some bike stands and more of those, so that people can leave them and
to lock
it's
it
not
to.
200 yards from one to the other. It's only 50 yards.
Yes. Yeah. No. Good point. A couple of quick final ones, David. I think the other David was asking about maintenance. Is that pretty similar?
Exactly.
You mentioned about battery there, but the rest of the bike, is that pretty similar to normal bikes?
That's right.
Yeah.
So we, and therefore we charge the same for a normal bike service. The e-bike side of it, which is actually plugging it in, downloading, printing out, that kind of stuff, we charge a £30 for doing that as part of it. But as a normal person maintaining it, you would look after your transmission and chain and brakes as you normally would on a bike.
Okay, good stuff. One last easy one. David's also asking, can you get up Rosedale Chimney Bank with an e-bike? So I'm guessing you can go up anywhere more or less.
Yes, I mean on that the one that we showed you of the first bike, possibly that would struggle. But if you went and looked at the rail that we had there, Paul, the picture of the rail, Trek rail, don't know if you want to put that up.
Probably can't get to that anymore. Sorry, I've closed them down. But
so that's a mountain bike. It's accesses its power more easy. It's got a bigger battery. It's got lower gearing. Absolutely, that would wallop up there.
Okay, fabulous. Terrific. Well, huge thanks to David and Helen for their expertise on cycling and e-bikes, and some good questions and discussion as well from everybody else. So we'll close it there for tonight. So look out for the recording on our website shortly. I guess just to plug, I put a link in there to the next Zoom meeting, which starts at 8. which is going to be really interesting because John Law, who's the new chap at Ryedale District Council in charge of climate change and environmental policy, is going to be there, and there's a little presentation, but I think he wants to hear from people. What do we need to do? You know, he's new in the job. And so he's all ears. So if you fancy tuning into that, then click on the link. I think we're probably going to have around 30 people for that. Surprise, surprise, that's one everybody's keen to have a say on. So maybe see you there in 5 or 10 minutes time. But otherwise, again, thanks for joining, and see you again soon.